they wouldn't have any interaction with us.
So you could worship a fairy at the bottom of the garden, as has been quoted to the committee. So that's my religion. I want tax exemption because that's my religion. And then you could carry out charitable.
Well, no, but charitable is different to just being a religious organisation. If I did assume, if you had the example of worshipping a fairy at the bottom of my garden, that was my religion, I might purport that to be the case. If that's all that I do, I have no income from that process anyway, so there would be no income tax.
But what if you bring people in and say, look, I want to show you where the fairy lives, and I'm going to charge you for that?
Then I guess, whilst they purport that that is a religion, and we of course have some indications from the High Court in Australia as to concepts of religion, if it did fit the guidance of the courts as to what a religion was, that would be acceptable. If, however, it was not a religion, then presumably it appears to be a commercial undertaking to view the fairy at the bottom of the garden. And the alleged fairy. And so...
they obviously believe there's a fairy.
I might pause.
Yeah, maybe a good thing, yeah. You indicated, and I think it may have been Mr. Wilcock, I'm not sure, that there have been decisions made to ignore recommendations from various inquiries about charities.
I didn't say that, Senator.
But I'm sure earlier in the piece you spoke about some of the inquiries, but no decisions had been... No?
No. I've spoken about the inquiries at this session.
You didn't? Has there been, well maybe I can ask you this, has there been any deliberative government decisions not to make changes to charitable definitions arising out of recent inquiries?
Do you mean this particular government,
No,
Senator, or governments generally?
The previous government and this government.
There have indeed, I think, been a number of reviews or inquiries or public processes that have looked at the not-for-profit sector generally, including the charity sector. I mean, a list of ones that I've got before me include a 1995 Industry Commission.
Yeah, I know, sorry, Mr. Wilcock, I know those.
So they go. I personally have not had such an extensive involvement in this particular area of public policy as to know the background on all of those.
Yeah.
The most recent, well not the most recent, but a significant process was the 2001 Charities Definition Inquiry, which did indeed result in legislation that was introduced into the Parliament that was relatively broad in seeking to provide statutory definition of charitable purposes, and indeed went broader than that. I'm not aware of why, but I know that that particular legislation did not pass the Parliament, and instead narrower legislation which extended the definition of charitable purposes in relation to a couple of categories which you already know about took place. The most recent processes, of course, are the Productivity Commission's report, which reported at the beginning of the year about the contribution of the not-for-profit sector. My understanding is that the government is still considering that report and has yet to give its response to that. The Australia Futures Tax System Review also covered briefly not-for-profit issues and made various recommendations, including the establishment of a Charities Commission. The government's response to that whole review process was released on the 2nd of May, and on that the government's response simply noted that in relation to the not-for-profit sector, that it wasn't going to make any changes to the tax system that harm the not-for-profit sector. including removing the benefit of tax concessions, raising gift deductibility threshold or changing income tax arrangements for clubs. But more generally, the government did note that there's an awful lot in that particular report. The government was just doing particular things now, and there would be more reform initiatives flowing in due
Okay,
course.
I'm running out of time, and I'd like to move on. Mr. Hardy, how many monitoring actions, if I could call them that, most people would call them investigations, what do you call them before I ask the question?
Reviews, and there are a range of different activities, but
Okay.
reviews of one form or another.
So how many reviews do you carry out in a year?
Probably in the order of 2,000, maybe 2,500. It varies. As we discussed before, there's perhaps 1,800 or so of the new applicants which are scrutinised more carefully than others, and so there's a review process upon
That's
application.
new applicants, I'm talking about
Yes.
existing.
And so then the balance might be another 200 to 400 perhaps of pre-existing endorsed entities where we check their progress against their status.
So that's 200 to 400 out of 60,000.
In that order, yes. 55, I think, is about in terms of charitable.
Is that viewed as statistically good enough?
Well, it is a risk-assessed situation. Of course, there's grades of charities from very, very small, almost trivial in their activities, through to much more substantive ones. And of course, the tax office needs to balance the resource it has available to it against all of the obligations of the Commissioner.
Sure, and that's the point I think we've been trying to make, that given you've got 68 employees and you're looking after 50,000 charities, you're checking them when they come in, you're supposed to monitor them as they go through their activities. It's a big task, isn't it?
It is a big task.
It's a big task, yeah. I'll leave it a big task. I've just had a look at the research paper from the House of Commons Library, which is explaining the bill that established the Commission. And there's a definition of charity. And one of the definitions of charity is the relief of those in need by reason of youth, age, ill health, disability, financial hardship, and other disadvantage. I had an exchange with Father Lucas. I'm not sure if you were here or you monitored that exchange. But I asked Father Lucas said that caring for rich people is as charitable as caring for poor people. And I was a bit surprised. I said, well, I thought charity was about caring for those that didn't have the means to look after themselves. So I may want to get your view on that. But I then went on to say, well, look, can you have a retirement home for burnt-out merchant bankers? And would that meet the test of tax-free status? Father Lucas said, basically, yes. I'm a bit appalled about that, and I really wonder if a group of rich people can come together with obvious means, not in need of charity, and get a tax-free status if they establish an aged care home with the best of everything available to them, living out their life in luxury, and get a tax-free status. Is that possible?
Well, I respect that Father Lucas has his own opinion. I think it's improbable. This is perhaps a good example of where
I'm relieved.
the public benefit test might already be applied by the tax office, because we do recognise in terms of the public benefit test, as it does have application in common law, there's two elements. There's the public and the benefit. And if you had such a fictitious merchant banker's retirement home, and they were all wealthy, not necessarily saying that all merchant bankers are wealthy, but let's assume they're all wealthy people, and so it's somewhat exclusive as to the ability to enter into that retirement home, it may not in fact be sufficiently public to really be charitable. However, I imagine there may be some charitable organisations that do perhaps care for someone who maybe is otherwise considered wealthy.